Glad you're here with us. And if you want to go ahead and be making your way over to the book of Job chapter 28 is where we're going to be picking up this evening, Job 28. Good deal. A few quick things we want to be prayerful about this evening. We got a good report on Sarah Bellamy. Her surgery went well. She's at home and doing good. We want to continue to pray for Miss Rhonda Birdwell. That's the sister-in-law of Pam Hill, as well as the families of Rainey Robertson, Joanne Goodman, and Jack Brown. And so that would be Joanne Goodman is Renee Belcher's mother, and then Jack Brown is Russell Brown's father, as they passed away. And I have a note on the arrangements for Jack Brown. He will be at Anderson Upper Cumberland. Visitation will be Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. The funeral will be Saturday at 10 a.m. in Gainesboro. So that is definitely want to be with those families. I don't know that I have any new names. Do y'all have anybody that we need to add or update on here? Yes. Okay. Well, good. And so this is the surgery that's happening ahead of schedule because things are going well. So great news. Hopefully those two surgeries go well with Faye Snow, July 11th. Any others? Yes. Great news. And what's your daughter's name? Stephanie. We'll pray for them as they are making their way across country. Okay. Gotcha. Are they riding together? By themselves? Okay. Gotcha. Any others? Okay. Miss Virginia Adkins? Miss Virginia Adkins has now been moved to Westmoreland Rehab. All right. If there are any others, make sure to get those in to the office. We'll get them into the bulletin for Sunday. If you would, let's go ahead and open up with a word of prayer, and then we'll get into our study for this evening. So if you would, please pray with me. It's a good evening, Lord, to be able to have time together and time in your word. It's been a beautiful day and a beautiful week, and we want to give you glory for blessing us with that. Thank you for the little things that we find in family and in each other, in small blessings that we so often take for granted. And we ask that you can help us to find you and see you in each and every one of them. We ask for your guidance and your help and your Spirit's intervention as we make our way through Job 28. We know just how perfect your word is and how it's designed to change us and shape us. But we know that we're in need of help to better understand it and to come to know your truths. And so we ask for your help in this endeavor. Especially, Lord, please be with those that we have talked about that some are sick and in need of prayers. Others are recovering. Some have upcoming procedures. Some are traveling. Others have lost loved ones. And in each of those ups and downs of life, we're thankful that you're here for us, that you're there for them. And may we, as Christians, be a standing reminder of your presence in each of their lives. Be with each of us, please, and help us to be more like you. And please watch over our families and our loved ones and bring blessings in their lives. And we pray all this through Jesus. Amen. Okay, where we are at tonight in Job 28. I'm excited about this. I've actually looked forward to this for a minute now, I guess however many months we've been in the book of Job, because this is one of the most descriptive poems in the entire book of Job, and it's also really cool, if you're a nerd like me, that we get probably the oldest depiction of mining to date. Like the whole poem, or at least the beginning of the poem, describes the process of like mining in the ancient Near East. And Job's going to make this just incredible point, connecting mining between like searching for wisdom and searching for God, which, I mean, to be fair, is what Job's done the entire book, right? Like he's on a search for something. He's digging for answers. And so he's going to make a lot of those comparisons. But what I guess I also want to mention is that from like an academic standpoint, so these are even people that don't believe that there is a God. These are people that don't believe that the Bible is inspired by Him. Like they even still look not only at the book of Job as a work of art, but specifically Job chapter 28 into 29 and 30 and 31 as a whole. That chunk of text has been called by numerous people one of the most beautiful pieces of poetry in human thought, like in history, like that we have access to. And so these are people that are a lot smarter than me and read a whole lot more poems than I do, are saying this about this work that we have with us within the Bible. So I'm excited for that. But before we get into the text, we'll first read verses 1 through 11. Job chapter 28, 1 through 11. We'll split that up into two readings. If I could get somebody to read 1 through 6 and then somebody else to read 7 through 11, that would be great. And whoever has it, feel free just to start reading.
Surely there is a vein for the silver and a place for gold where they find it. Iron is taken out of the earth and brass is molten out of the stone. He setteth it into darkness and searcheth out all perfection. The stones of darkness and the shadow of death. The flood breaketh out from the inhabitant, even the waters forgotten of the foot. They are dried up, they are gone away from men. As for the earth, out of it cometh bread, and under it is turned up as it were fire. The stones of it are the place of sapphires, and it hath dust of gold.
Thank you. And then somebody else, verses 7 through 11. Perfect. So I will ask you this first question, and you don't have to be an expert unless you've watched like some History Channel or YouTube documentary and want to enlighten us on your depth of knowledge on mining. Really basic stuff is all I'm going for. What do you know and what do you think of when we talk about mining? Okay, did you say coal? Yeah, mining for coal. That's actually the next picture that I have for you. So that was a good first one. Anyway, what else do we think about? Okay, it's very dirty. Yeah, it's pretty hard work. Mining's pretty hard work. Very dangerous. A lot of deaths. Yeah, it gets pretty dark. They have to run lights down there if they have any. And outside of that, I guess they give the little hats with the lights on the head. Huh? Okay. So it's even pretty close to us. They mine zinc in Smith County. That also kind of goes to show there's a lot of different things that you can mine. Some of us think of like coal. Others might think of things like zinc. You might even, when we get into this conversation in Job, it seems that they're searching after more precious metals is what they're referencing the mining of, like gold. Okay, any others? My personal favorite, dynamite. Have you ever heard of that? That would be dynamite. That's what they often use to make channels, to blow the tops off of mountains. Mining is like we said, very, very dangerous. A lot of times they have to plant different charges to be able to blow holes, blow chunks of rock out to get to whatever it is they're digging for and get to whatever it is that they're searching for. And so mining is something that probably had a lot bigger of a focus in the past 100 years, more so than today, especially like in this area. Mining was a way of life, I guess, if you get into eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, which keep in mind, let's all be very clear. Yes, I am from Kentucky. I am from western Kentucky, okay? Whole different world. Our world is very flat and full of like row crops. And so anyway, whenever Murray State made the NCAA tournament one year, the way that they like talked about it and promoted it was with banjo music, and that just showed how poorly they got it. Like that's the whole other end of the state. That's East Kentucky. That's coal country. That would be the banjo music. They're the ones that don't have shoes. I have shoes. See, but anyway, you get into like that part of the world. It's an entire way of life, right? In the words of Tyler Childers, God made coal for the men who sold their lives to West Van Leer. And when you think about what it takes to extract something from the earth, it is always with purpose, and it's always for some sort of value. Like they're going to get something that is worth something. You don't spend all of that money to blow the tops off of mountains unless there's something within it that you want. You're not going to pay all of those miners to go and dig into the depths of the earth unless there's something down there that you're trying to acquire and try to attain that's of value. And so whether that's coal or whether that's precious minerals, when you think of it, you might think of coal mining. And so there's a few different pictures. You probably really can't see the black and white ones all that well. You probably saw this one on the top left. That's from 2022. That's a guy that got done with his shift and then went to a Wildcats basketball game, I guess this past winter. And so he made the news. And you have all these different pictures of old and of new. And as you know, this is something that is in steep decline. There's thousands and thousands less mining jobs today than there were so many years ago. You ask why that is. It could partially have to do with mining something to death. You eventually can dig so much out of it that there's not much there left to dig. Also has to do with a lot more machines that can do a lot of the same jobs. I kind of see both sides of it when it comes to those miners that don't want to go into a mine and get black lung. I completely understand that, and I can side with you in that. But when you have a company that comes back and says, well, we don't really have a way to get you in the mine without you being exposed to all that, and if we put enough respirators on you, you'd probably get heat stroke. So instead of sending people down there, we're going to send machines. I can understand that. And so you have a decrease, I guess, in those jobs as machines are becoming ever and ever more prevalent. When you think of mining, you might think of that. When you think of mining, realize that it's something that's done all the world over. Again, really poor quality. You can't see it from there. But this is mining that takes place in the Congo currently. There's a lot more mining that is done outside of the U.S. for things like this than what there are within. You get into South America and Africa, mining looks a lot of different ways, shapes, and sizes. These people are not digging into caves and tunnels the way that coal miners do. They are currently digging for cobalt. You say, what is the purpose of cobalt? Well, cobalt is used in every single battery that you have in your pocket with your phone. It's used to battery power your computer, and it's used to battery power your Tesla and your Prius. So to be fair, I agree with you that the diesel my truck burns is killing the environment. I also want to show you that the battery in your Tesla is built on slave labor and those children. So it depends on who has more rights, I guess, the earth or those kids. But nevertheless, as we move into mining, we see that this is what we're most talking about is valuable mining. Not coal, not fuels, not things to be used and manipulated, but things, gems, precious gems that are mined because them in and of themselves are of value just to have. So that's what Job 28 is talking about when we start talking about mining. The top 10 gold mines in the world, I just thought this was neat, so I threw it up there. It's interesting to know that the number one gold mining nation right now is still the U.S. Out of the Nevada gold mine, 115 tons, and that's the metric tons with an E on the end, so that's like 250 4.62 more pounds than a U.S. ton, something like that. But anyway, tons and tons of gold that's being mined. Why? Because it's worth something. And so I say all of that to build this up. Like, we wouldn't go to such great extents to extract precious metals from the earth if they didn't have great value. Digging deep to extract valuables. That is the setting, and that's the context of everything that we just read. So let's go back into the text. And it's really interesting to kind of watch the way that Job talks about this and seems to know some about it. So in verses 1 and 2, he talks about mining for silver and for gold that they seek to refine. In verse 2, he talks about taking iron out of the earth and copper being smelted from ore. In verses 3 and following, it seems that they search out far limits and go into gloom and deep darkness. So it seems they also know what it's like, verse 4, to open up shafts and valleys and dig deep and go places that are forgotten by travelers and places that have never even been seen before by, like verses 7 and 8. Birds and animals don't even see the places that they're venturing. At the end of verse 4 is interesting. They hang in the air far away from mankind. It seems like that at times they would repel, I guess, onto the sides of mountains to try to get into different caves or to try to extract different precious metals. And as of the earth, out of it comes bread, but underneath it's turned up by fire, which is really interesting and curious of how much did they know about mining, and if they were really getting into these rocks, I mean, were they using some kind of ancient explosive? Keep in mind, people were a lot smarter than we often give them credit. Verse 6, its stones are the place of sapphires, and it has dust of gold. So it's showing that once you dig deep into the earth, even the very dust, the thing that we have a ton of, is something that's oh so valuable once you dig deep to find it. Verses 9 through 11, man puts his hand to the flinty rock and overturns mountains by the roots. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eye sees every precious thing. He dams up the streams so that they do not trickle, and the thing that is hidden he brings out to light. And so all of the things that are hidden are sought to be brought out because they are of value, because they're precious. And that is a very beautiful depiction and a very beautiful image of the way that Job describes the mining shafts and repelling, and the earth being seems to be turned up as by fire. They're going into the depths of the earth to bring this stuff out, places that animals have not even ventured, and they overturn the mountains and they cut channels out of rock to be able to reach all of these things. And again, it's the same thought that we've said 3 times this evening that we'll say a fourth. It has to be for a purpose, and it has to be for a reason. It's because there is something there of value that they're trying to attain. And the same thought process brings us into verse 12. If somebody would, please read it for us.
But where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding?
Notice that. And that word but makes a shift, a transition in Job's thought process. He said, I've got all of this understanding of us digging and searching and going and finding all of these precious metals. But where can wisdom be found? I've yet to find the cave that we can dig deep enough in to extract some wisdom. Understanding, where can understanding be dug up and brought into the light the same way that we have this gold and this silver and these valuable things? And so it leads us to ask this question. Well, that's a good question, Job. Where do we find wisdom from? And that's not a rhetorical question. That's a class question. Where do we find wisdom? And there can be more than one correct answer. Okay, to be fair, when we go and look at maybe other people's research and look at other things maybe that they've studied or that they have written, we can find wisdom, maybe find knowledge, find answers in those things. Where else can we find wisdom? Okay, in God's Word. That's probably the greatest source of wisdom that we have. The only perfect source would be, and I mean the author of wisdom to begin with, God Himself. So that would be a great place to go and search and find wisdom. Keep going. Okay, experience, age. Oftentimes, wisdom, people say like wisdom is knowledge put into practice. So wisdom comes with time. Wisdom comes with trial and error. Wisdom comes with, maybe it's not even our own trial and error. Maybe it's watching something or somebody else play out, and we're able to learn from that. That's probably some of the best lessons learned, is the ones that we don't have to learn the hard way ourselves. Maybe we observe from somebody else, or observe from another situation, and we learn from that and gain wisdom from that, our own experience. Proverbs 3 and 4, chapters 3 and 4, do a great job in showing a search and find dynamic to wisdom. Both of them, it's the end of chapter 3 going into chapter 4. Talks about the way that it's interesting, those that are the most wise don't stumble upon it. Those that have the most wisdom, they don't just wake up one day and like have all of these answers. Like Yoda didn't just wake up as Yoda. You know what I mean? Like there had to be a search for wisdom in order to truly be exceptionally wise. It doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one day and it's automatically boom there. But instead, it's something that we seek after. And the entire book of Proverbs makes that clear. But especially chapters 3 and 4 show that relationship of searching, seeking, and finding it. And I believe that it's the entire purpose of the first 11 verses of this poem is showing how they search and how they seek and how they genuinely work for these precious metals that they're trying to mine and they're trying to take possession of. And it then lends to that question as we make this verse 12 transition, but what about wisdom? Leads us to ask that question, do we search for wisdom in that same way? Do we mine for wisdom? Do we seek wisdom? Do we seek to understand people? Do we seek to understand this world? Do we seek to understand God in the same way that we might seek after and work for and search for something that is valuable? Okay, so that's the initial question that Job is asking. And we're going to see, he spends the rest of the chapter working through it. So obviously we're going to spend the rest of the chapter working through it. Verse 13 reads, so verse 12, but where shall wisdom be found, and where's the place of understanding? Verse 13, man does not know its worth, and it is not found in the land of the living. Okay, and this is the question, do you believe that humanity knows the worth of wisdom? What do you think? This would be a yes. This would be a no. This would be a maybe. This would be I'm asleep, not listening. Oh, okay. Okay, maybe humanity doesn't seek after true wisdom, but superficial wisdom. A wonderful place to go for that would be 1 Corinthians chapter 1, talking about the difference between worldly wisdom and godly wisdom. And that there is a difference between the two. One might be respected and revered by the world, but it's completely separate from the kind of wisdom that God calls for. Okay, any other thoughts? Okay, so a desire or pure motives for wisdom doesn't necessarily guarantee that godly wisdom is what you're going to find. That's fair. So the main answer, I guess, to does humanity value wisdom or not, would come into the very question that we have been asking, that we just said from Proverbs 3 and 4, is how do we seek it? How you value something is going to directly correlate to how you seek after it, or how you work for it, or what you are willing to do to attain it, right? It makes sense. You're going to see just how much that means to you in how much you're willing to pay for it. Like that's a very simple concept to us. So I believe the exact same goes for us. Job seems to look at the world around him and say, man does not know wisdom's worth, and it's not even found in the land of the living, which we'll come back to in a minute. The deep says, it is not in me. The sea says, it is not within me. And those two things are very, very closely connected, because if you look at the very beginning of Genesis 1 and look at the Godhead hovering over the quote-unquote waters, it could just as equally be translated as the deep. And that goes really deep into the way that the Hebrew people saw the world outside of earth, like space and everything else. But he's saying, even outside of this earth, it cannot be found. You go into the deep and it says, it's not in me. And you go into the sea that's so vast and so broad and it says, wisdom's not with me. Okay. Now we get into verses 15 through 19, and I'll ask somebody else to please read it. And this is the moment, and these are the verses where this conversation on mining and precious metals and this conversation of wisdom really come together. So for the people that are like reading this on their own, not here this evening, reading this on their own, and haven't got it yet, haven't got the connection between mining for gold and mining for wisdom, Job's now making it super clear for them. So somebody, if you would, please read 15 through 19. Thank you. So when you look through all of these different precious metals that Job goes on listing, gold and silver, and I'm sure a few different translations list things differently. Onyx, sapphire, gold again, gold a third time, glass or crystal, jewels, coral crystal, pearls, topaz, pure gold, so like third or fourth time. All of these things do not equal it. And all of these things cannot purchase it. So I'll ask you this question. What do you believe the price of wisdom is? Okay, it's priceless. What does it take in order for us to acquire it then? Maybe. If it can't be bought, if it can't be purchased, then we'll look at it that way. What is the price of wisdom? What does it take in order for us to attain it or achieve it? Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. So kind of like what we've been talking about throughout the book of Job, and this thought of position or wealth or status. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, which is not always the truth. I know I've seen before, there's this young guy that does interviews with people. He'll walk up to somebody just fresh off of the street. And I don't know why they do this. Maybe it's a fake microphone, or maybe it's got a real thing. They hold their cell phone like a microphone, the hip young kids, and I'm really not sure why. But he holds his cell phone as a microphone, and he asks a random person, would you mind telling me what your net worth is? And you would be surprised what some of the people on the street are either worth or willing to lie and say that they're worth. But then, based on the answer to that question, he'll then ask, what's your biggest piece of advice to somebody, that's 21 years old like me? And then it's interesting to see that based on their answer to that first question, if that number is big enough, it validates them to be wise enough to instruct a 21-year-old in what to do from that step forward. And we still do it today. It's that exact same thought of that wisdom is connected to success. or if wisdom is connected to wealth or connected to 100 different things, that it might very well be true, but isn't always certain. Like, that's not a guaranteed silver bullet. So when we look at what the price of wisdom is, it could come in a lot of different shapes and forms. It could come from us learning the easy way and understanding from God's perspective, seeing the world, seeing situations from God's perspective in a way that we gain His wisdom without having to go through the school of hard knocks. Or it could be the other end of the spectrum where we go through it ourselves. We maybe gain wisdom from failure, or we gain wisdom from success, or from humility, or from different experiences that we have. And so wisdom often costs something, whether that be time, whether that be effort, whether that be us paying attention, or whether that be putting some difficult things into practice. Any other thoughts on the price of wisdom? I'm curious in this, and I'll never really know for sure. I wonder, as Job is making this speech, and he's walking through this conversation of where can one find wisdom, does he, and again, it's a question I'm not sure we'll fully know the answer of. He's so sure of himself throughout the entire book, but it seems like wisdom is so unfindable for him. So it seems from where I'm reading that Job doesn't consider himself to be the possessor of wisdom or this really wise person, but yet he's so sure that he's right, and he's so sure that he holds all of these answers, but yet he's questioning wisdom from the very beginning. Just an interesting thought that crossed my mind. But he doesn't stop here. We'll keep going in this conversation of wisdom. If somebody would read verses 20 to 22. Perfect, thank you. Okay. This, also connecting back with wisdom not being found in the land of the living, verse 13, teaches us it's something about the way that the Jewish people understood wisdom and the way that they looked at the dead, which is like a quarter-long, half-year-long Wednesday night Bible study in and of itself, is the way that the Jewish people in the Old Testament understood death. I don't want to get too far into it, but one of the interesting beliefs that kind of goes back and forth. I don't think it was 100% one way or the other. I think you had different Jews that thought differently. There were some with more of a pagan influence. So from outside tribes that were not God's people, from a pagan influence, they believed that the dead held all of the answers to the future. They believed that the dead had a wisdom that we don't have on this earth. They believed that if they could then contact the dead, then they could receive some of those answers, which is why we see in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 31, what does God forbid the Israelites to do? To be in contact with mediums, to try to get into some kind of contact with the dead, because He doesn't want them going to anyone for answers about their future, but who? Him. And so it's interesting to watch. It's a really interesting thought throughout the entirety of the Old Testament, is there seems to be, maybe not the whole, but a group that believes that there is wisdom found within those who have passed on. Like there's almost this understanding that you get of death, where everything makes sense, you understand and know the future, which is then further solidified when our good friend King Saul goes to the witch at Endor and wants to raise Samuel the prophet. Why? To get answers about the future. Could that be because he was dead? It could. It also could be just simply because he's a prophet and knew the future. So that one's kind of hard to tell which way it falls. But either way, there's this odd Old Testament connection in belief that the dead have some kind of knowledge or some kind of wisdom that we don't have. Now, why I put the word contradictory up there is because that is not held by Scripture. You go to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10, and it says, in the place of death or in the place of Sheol, there is no knowledge, there is no understanding, there's no place for praising God. And that's a passage out of Isaiah. So it's almost like you have these two different views throughout the Old Testament. But Job here seems to be saying and seems to be believing that beyond this world and in the realm of the dead is some kind of wisdom that they can attain or that they wish they had. Verses 20 through 22, what we just read. So where does wisdom come from? Verse 21, it's hidden from the eyes of the living and concealed from the birds of the air. And then verse 22, Abaddon and death say, I mean, we've heard a rumor of it with our ears, but even they don't hold and have all the answers and all the keys to wisdom. So with Job looking everywhere, looking absolutely everywhere for wisdom, he can't find it. He's described the earth. He is described even going we said into the deep and into the sea, things that are beyond this earth. That would include the deep and the sea would include not only like the depths of the sea, but like the deep as in the deep expanse of space. We get into looking at death, even the realm of the dead, Abaddon and death. I'm searching everywhere. I'm looking everywhere for wisdom, and I haven't been able to turn it up. I haven't been able to find it. I haven't been able to dig it up the way that I have been mining for it, the way I've been searching for it. And he comes to this kind of conclusion, this full circle conclusion here in verses 23 through 28. Job has no answers on where to find wisdom, but yet he says in verse 23, God understands the way to it, and He knows its place. For He looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When He gave to the wind its weight and apportioned the waters by measure. Going back to creation, talking about God that created. Verse 26, when He made a decree for the rain and a way for the lightning of the thunder, then He saw it and declared it. He established it and searched it out. And He said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding, which in your footnotes you can probably find and cite to a few different passages between the Psalms and the Proverbs that talk about true wisdom being the fear of the Lord, and true understanding being righteousness. Now, this is odd to me. This is odd. Why is it odd that Job just said everything that he just said? Yeah.
Saying that that's what wisdom is, contradicting what he's been saying so far.
Absolutely. So when you look down and hear Job say in verse 28, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding. If you've read the rest of the book of Job up until now, that doesn't sound like a Job quote. That sounds like one of his friends' quotes to him. Like, Job, if you'll just fear God and repent, it'll all make sense. If you'll just fear God and turn things around, He'll make everything come full circle. He'll bless you again. Like, you gotta change. And then you have Job, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's finally starting to come around on some of these things. If you read chapters 29 through 31, you'll find out that's not the case. But I mean, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because we're in chapter 28 right now. So maybe he's starting to come around and seeing God in the proper place of being the true holder of wisdom and understanding. Maybe he's finally seeing God on a pedestal, on the pedestal that he's on. It could also be that he knows God is the one that holds all of the answers to why this is happening to him. And so maybe he's saying this to justify, here's the reason why. Here's the reason why I have been calling God out for the last 27 chapters. He holds all of the wisdom and understanding and answers. I've searched everywhere and can't find the wisdom and understanding and answers. This is why I've been trying to put God on trial, which there's trial imagery used throughout the book of Job. The reason I've been trying to put God on trial is because He's the one that holds the answers to what I need answered. He's the one that has, the gold within His mountain. And I need Him to come down and share it with me. I've dug everywhere else and can't find it. He's the only one that can explain these answers to me. And that's why I've been, maybe Job is saying all this to try to justify. That's why I've been so forward with God, is I know He's the only one that holds these answers. Okay, any thoughts at this point, or comments, or questions, or arguments? Nothing? Nobody on the cobalt mine in the Congo? No? Okay, that's fine. You'll probably come up to me after church to talk to me about that. Here's your homework. Over the next week, if you have an opening, read Job's 29 through 31. Here is the reason why. It is a repetition of Job's entire argument. So we're not going to take class time to go throughout it. But if there's something within it that you have a question about, make a note of it. That's where we'll start next week, is if there's any questions about chapters 29 through 31. But you will find the same thing that I found. There's not going to be anything new within it. He reiterates his final argument one last time. So bring any questions or verses you'd like to discuss. And next week, we're going to get to one of my favorite people in the entirety of the Bible, and that's Elihu. Because he's a young guy, and he probably shouldn't, but he steps up and he speaks on God's behalf anyway. So I'm really looking forward to that. Okay. Good to go. All right. If you would like to go ahead and mark in your songbooks, the song of invitation will be 554. 554 will be the song of invitation. As far as our prayer list goes, we want to continue to keep Miss Virginia Adkins in our prayers as she's been moved to Westmoreland Rehab. We also have Miss Rhonda Birdwell. That's Miss Pam Hill's sister-in-law. Keep her in our prayers. Great news on Sarah Bellamy's surgery. That everything went well, so that's wonderful. Faith Snow is having her 2 surgeries on July 11th, so we'll continue to pray for her and that those go well. We also have Stephanie, not Frazier, was Frazier, but not a Frazier anymore because she's married. But the Frazier's daughter is making a trip from California to here, Hendersonville, more or less. And so they're making that cross-country trip. Let's keep them in our prayers, as well as Miss Gay's nephew, is that right? Making that same trip as a doctor. We have quite a few that have lost loved ones here recently. We have sympathy to the family of Rainey Robertson, Joanne Goodman, and Jack Brown. And so Miss Joanne Goodman, that is the mother of Renee Belcher, and Jack Brown, the father of Russell Brown. And then I had the arrangements on Jack Brown. He is going to be at Anderson in Gainsboro, and that is going to be this weekend. I believe visitation was at, hold on, there we go. Visitation is Friday from 4 to 7 p.m., and the funeral is Saturday at 10 a.m. Okay, did I miss anyone for the sick and prayer list? Wonderful, moving forward. Up and coming, we have a whole bunch of things, so I'm going to be fast. Please be attentive. First and foremost, there is new curriculum in the classrooms, so teachers be looking for that starting this upcoming Sunday. Your new curriculum will be there for you. Small group meetings will be not this Sunday night, but next Sunday night, June 11th, and the locations will be posted in the bulletin for each group. The American Cross Bloodmobile will be here on June 12th. And also on June 12th, this is not actually what it is, but I'm going to announce it to you as a mini gospel meeting. Here is why. There is going to be Summer Youth Series that's going to be hosted here, that you're going to have an opportunity to come and worship with not only these young people, but like 150 other young people. And it's not designed just to be for just kids. The speaker is going to be incredible. The singing is going to be wonderful. And so if you would, treat it like a mini one-night gospel meeting on June 12th. Be here not only for your uplift and encouragement, but also to show these kids and the kids of this area that we support them. To go along with that, there is a sign-up sheet in the foyer to bring side dishes or chips and things of that nature. So if you would see that and sign up for that, and after you've signed up, put it in your calendar and plan on being here because it's going to be wonderful not only for the kids, but for us as a congregation to get to crowd around them. Then there will be a Classic Christian Servants meeting on June 13th at 11 a.m. in the Refuge. A sign-up list has been posted in the foyer to get a head count. Matt Schaus will be attending. Matt, how old are you, man? I'm just kidding. He'll be attending to help with the Realm app for all of those who do not have it and are not familiar with it. So to have some time to get some questions answered, and get more familiar with that app. The Tuesday ladies class, they will not meet during the months of June and July, but be looking for that to start back up in August. Okay, as far as the youth go, first thing, see, I told you we had a lot. First thing, this Sunday is promotion Sunday. So whatever grade you're going into, go into that class on this Sunday. There will also be a camp staff meeting. So for all of the staff that are going to camp this summer, it will be this Saturday. The bus will leave at 9:30, and it'll be at Franklin. It'll be at Franklin Church of Christ. So see Paul, be here for that. The bus leaves Saturday morning at 9:30 to go up there for that meeting. Pew Packers Sunday evening. Jaywalkers Camp will be June 5th through June 7th. So that's this upcoming week. It'll be from 8 a.m. until noon. See Paul for details. Work Camp will also be June 5th through June 9th for any teenagers. So they'll help with the Jaywalkers Camp, but then also go out in the community. And we are still in need of people that might be willing to help, and then also people that have work that needs to be done. Please pick up an application and fill that out. These are due May 31st. That would be tonight. Okay. See teen calendar for more information. That's, I think, everything that I have. Song of Invitation is 5:54, and Nathan, I'll turn this over.
I was sitting here wondering how in the world I put this thing under a regular shirt. So Joshua knew how nervous I was, so he gave me this to squeeze while I'm standing up here. Because I'm not going to lie, I thought Nick was supposed to be doing it tonight. And he agrees. He also thought he was supposed to be doing it tonight, but that's all right. I come prepared. So I decided I'm going to do mine over a little bit of self-control. I did a whole sermon about that a little while back, and thought I'd cover it a little bit better. I'm sure y'all are familiar with this, but 2 Peter chapter 1, there's a little part in here where it's talking about what you need to add to your faith. And it goes through a little bit, and then it says, and to knowledge, temperance, and to temperance, patience, and to patience, godliness, in verse 6 of that. Temperance is basically self-control, being able to control yourself depending on the situation that you're put in every single day. And I think a lot of people have trouble with that. I myself, I have trouble with that, in case you haven't seen my BMI, just by looking at me. I love food way too much, that's for sure. And it's hard to control myself whenever I'm around a good pepperoni pizza, especially a large. And I'd say a lot of us have struggles similar to that. Maybe not that same one. Maybe you do. I don't know. Every single day. You're driving to work in the morning, and you're like, oh, I'm 10 minutes late. Be real nice, this long stretch of straight road, if I could just drive a few miles over the speed limit. That's a little bit of self-control issue. We still need to be able to control ourselves a little bit to follow the law, I think, but I do that too almost every other morning. I need to learn to control myself. And it's not only that. I mean, you can have little things like that you have self-control over, but there's also those big things too. Adultery is a big one, you know, being unfaithful. It's huge, and it's something that 10 Commandments don't do it. So that's one of the earlier things that we are told to try to control ourselves over. And I mean, I work in mental health. A lot of you probably know that. Some of you probably don't. That's one of the biggest issues a lot of people have trouble with when they come and talk to me and they come and see me. I don't know if you know this as well, but bipolar mania, it's like someone reached into your brain and took out that little part that controls you, that has self-control. You no longer know what you're doing or have any morality about what you're doing. You just do whatever it is that you want. And it's a rough thing to live with, for sure. I included that to say that a lot of people have control over how they self-control, and some people don't. But either way, it's something that is very important to how we're supposed to be living, how we're supposed to be doing things through the Bible and through what God and what Jesus is wanting us and telling us to do. A big one, of course, is reading our Bible. How often do we do that? Is it every single day? Is it for 5 minutes in the morning when you wake up, or is it for 15, or is it for an hour? How much do you really need? I don't think there's a limit. I certainly don't think there's a limit. Probably wouldn't be the best idea to be sitting down and reading all day instead of getting yourself a job and eating and taking care of yourself. Sure. I mean, all that stuff kind of goes along with what it says there too, but that's where that self-control comes in. Figuring out what the good amount is and figuring out what those limits are for much of life, for most of life. And like I said, I think it's something a lot of people have trouble with, myself included. And it's something we should be striving every single day to try to get better at. like I said, I came up with this on the spot. I had a couple of examples in my head that now they've just flown right out. But that's only a couple, the driving and stuff like that, and the adultery and things like that. But there's places all throughout the Bible that you can see where people did not have self-control. Take David and Bathsheba. That was a pretty rough one, where David saw something he liked and he just had to have it. Didn't matter what was in his way. Bathsheba's husband was one of those things that was in his way, and he ended up dying because of that. And it's something, like I said, it's something that David had to keep in his mind, and something that he repented of eventually and learned from, and it's something that we need to repent from ourselves and learn from. So to keep a long devotional short, if any of y'all have anything inside of your minds or inside of your daily lives that you feel like you haven't been controlling well enough, if you need a little bit more temperance inside of your daily lives, whether it comes to driving to work a little bit slower, being a little bit late just to keep yourself safe, because that's really what those laws are there for. If it comes to something I deal with all the time is people who drink alcohol, who abuse or use alcohol, and they can't control themselves enough to hold back from that. That's an addiction, and that's something very difficult to deal with, but it's still something that's possible because I've seen people turn away from it before. So I know it can happen. And if that's something that you're struggling with, don't leave it alone because it's too hard. Because really, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me, and that includes have a little bit more self-control to take care of ourselves. So if anybody here has any issues with that, I ask that you please come forward as we stand and sing this song.
Would you be free from the burden of sin? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you or evil a victory win? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you do service for Jesus your King? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you live daily His praises to sing? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb.
It's been great getting to be together this evening. I hope you can be back with us Sunday as we have just a few weeks left in our quarter studying on Genesis in our adult classes. And then we have our very last lesson in our Reaching Higher series, looking at how we worship 7 days a week. So I'm really looking forward to wrapping that up and bringing all of that together. If there isn't anything else, Adam, would you mind closing us out in prayer?
Heavenly Father, we thank you, God, just for this opportunity to come and study more about you and your word. We thank you, Father, for getting us through this part of the week. We ask you, God, just to be with all the many ones that's been on the prayer request. Lord, we thank you for the ones that you've reached down and touched and healed. We ask you, God, just to be with each and every one that's here and the ones that's not able to come. We ask you, God, just to go with us as we go home. Bring us back to the next appointed time.